It was supposed to be a moment of joy, a mother cradling her infant in the soft light of a Philadelphia studio, her smile gentle, her eyes calm. But when historian Rachel Turner found the photograph more than a century later, something about that smile refused to let her look away. It wasn't joy that she saw, not entirely. There was tension in the mother's posture, a quiet grief behind her eyes, as if the camera had captured not celebration but confession. Who was this woman? What sorrow lay hidden behind her carefully composed expression? And why did the air around this photograph feel heavy, as though it remembered something no one had ever spoken aloud? As Rachel followed the faint trail of letters, records, and forgotten diaries, the truth began to surface. A truth buried beneath social expectations, medical arrogance, and the unyielding silence of a world that refused to believe a mother's voice. Tonight, we will step quietly into that silence and listen to what the photograph has been trying to tell us for over 100 years. The rain whispered softly against the tall windows of the Philadelphia Historical Society, its rhythm steady and unhurried as Dr. Rachel Chen unpacked the newest donation from the Kellerman estate. Rachel had spent years surrounded by the still faces of history, family portraits, faded smiles, eyes that once held life. As a scholar of early 20th century photography and women's history, she had seen thousands of such images. And yet, something about this particular collection felt different. The Kellermans were an old Philadelphia family, prominent, refined, and endlessly documented. Their photographs told a story of elegance, the stiff charm of formal portraits, the glitter of soirees, the perfectly arranged parlor scenes meant to showcase wealth and grace. But nestled deep within the third box, wrapped carefully between layers of yellowing tissue paper, was a single photograph that made Rachel's breath catch. It showed a young woman, perhaps 25, seated in an ornate Victorian parlor. Her gown was white, impossibly pristine, trimmed with delicate lace. Her dark hair was arranged in the Gibson style so beloved in 1910. In her arms, she held an infant 6 months old, maybe swaddled in an elaborate christening gown. At first glance, the image seemed perfectly ordinary. A tender celebration of motherhood, a wealthy family's timeless ritual. The mother's smile was luminous, her eyes turned downward with apparent love. The lighting was soft, expertly composed, capturing the intimacy of the moment. And yet, Rachel couldn't shake a strange unease. There was something in that smile, something that didn't quite belong. It was flawless, yes, but almost forced. The corners of the mouth strained just a little too tight. And the woman's hands, Rachel's eyes lingered. They were gripping the baby far too firmly. The knuckles were pale, pressed hard against the fine fabric of the child's gown. Turning the photograph over, Rachel found only a few simple words written in fading ink: Eleanor and James, June 1910. No family name, no studio mark, no context at all. Just that, and the quiet sense that this image was hiding something, a tension that did not belong in a portrait of joy. She spent the rest of the morning studying it under every possible light, adjusting magnification testing angles, searching for the story behind the stillness. Years of work had taught her to look beyond composition, to read the emotions a camera might capture by accident. And what she found only deepened the quiet dread building inside her. Under magnification, the woman's expression told a different tale. Her smile, wide and radiant, showed the tiniest tremor near the eyes. The muscles along her jaw were taut, the strain barely masked. Her shoulders pulled too straight betrayed an effort to hold something in. Even the baby seemed wrong. Infant portraits from that era were often still, but not like this. This child's hands, visible beneath the edge of the christening gown, were limp, utterly lifeless in their softness. Rachel leaned closer. Her breath slowed. It was then she saw the truth that unsettled her most. The mother's hands. They weren't cradling the child, they were restraining it. The left hand, half hidden under folds of lace, showed white knuckles and fingers curled tight with effort. Rachel felt her pulse rise. She took a photo of the details, enlarged them on her computer, and stared in silence. Whatever story this photograph once told, whatever joy it was meant to preserve, had long since vanished. And in its place, only a quiet, inexplicable tension remained. The longer Rachel studied the photograph, the more she became convinced that she wasn't simply looking at a portrait of motherhood, but at a woman holding herself together through something unspeakable. The smile was a mask, the serenity a performance. Behind the softness of that gaze was the unmistakable strain of someone fighting to appear whole, when deep down, something had already begun to fracture. The image itself bore the hallmarks of a professional studio, the kind of refined composition that only the best photographers in Philadelphia could produce at the time. That detail gave Rachel a new lead. If the portrait had been taken by a studio, then perhaps records still existed. Names, dates, invoices. Anything that might reveal who Eleanor and James really were. She jotted down a note: Philadelphia Portrait Studios, circa 1910. A thread to follow, one that might explain why a photograph meant to celebrate life felt instead like a quiet memorial. By afternoon, Rachel found herself deep within the society's genealogy archives, paging through brittle ledgers and family registries. The Kellerman collection was vast, 3 generations of Philadelphia prominence, all neatly recorded. Yet the name Eleanor was elusive, tucked away in the folds of time. The breakthrough came almost by accident. In a stack of old correspondence, Rachel discovered a heavy family Bible. Its pages yellowed, its binding fragile. Inside, the genealogical entries were written in a delicate script, one name after another, until she found it. Eleanor Kellerman married Robert Kellerman, 1909. She was 24. A respectable match, Robert heir to a prosperous shipping business. Eleanor from an equally distinguished lineage. The union had been considered ideal, but beneath the neat list of births and deaths, something caught Rachel's eye. Next to the entry for their first child, James born June 1910. A faint note had been added in a different hand in darker ink. Died July 1910. The letters trembled slightly as though written in grief. Rachel's pulse quickened. She turned to the city archives, cross-referencing the record. There it was. James Kellerman, infant son of Robert and Eleanor. Died at 7 months. Cause of death, respiratory failure. No further explanation. No physician's note. No mention of illness. But the paper trail didn't end there. Among the Kellerman papers was a smaller box filled with personal letters, Eleanor's handwriting, delicate and slanted, addressed to her sister in New York. They spanned the year 1910 Rachel began to read. June 15th, 1910. The portrait session was arranged for yesterday. Robert insists that we must have proper documentation of our happiness. I try to smile, though my heart feels heavy. James seems so fragile. I fear for him constantly. June 25th, 1910. I cannot shake this feeling that something is terribly wrong. The doctor assures me James is well. Yet I know something is amiss. They say I worry too much, that all mothers do. But this feels different. The words were steeped in quiet dread a woman's intuition ignored. And then, near the end of the stack, one final letter, written days before the infant's death. I know now that my fears were not unfounded. But saying so brings me no comfort. I pray that God will forgive me for the thoughts I have harbored. Rachel sat in silence, the letter trembling in her hands. What thoughts had Eleanor meant? Her curiosity led her next to Dr. Margaret Lowe, a medical historian at the University of Pennsylvania, an expert in early 20th century pediatric medicine. If anyone could interpret what Eleanor's words suggested, it was her. Dr. Lowe listened carefully as Rachel described the letters and showed her the photograph. Infant mortality was heartbreakingly common in 1910, she said softly, adjusting her glasses. But the combination of the mother's letters, the official cause of death, and that photograph suggests something more specific. She leaned closer to the image, studying every line, every shadow. "Look here," she murmured. The baby's stillness, the limp hands, the mother's grip, not tender but firm, almost restraining. Rachel felt a chill run through her. Dr. Lowe continued, her tone hushed. In that era, many neurological disorders went undiagnosed, conditions that affected muscle tone, breathing, even consciousness. It's possible James suffered from one of these. His mother likely noticed the signs before anyone else did. She paused. And when her fears were dismissed, she was left alone with the terrible certainty that something was wrong and no one believed her. The photograph, once a symbol of joy, had become something else entirely. A silent record of a mother's dread captured forever in silver and shadow. The photograph, once merely unsettling, now seemed to transform before Rachel's eyes. It was no longer a simple portrait of mother and child. It was a confession, silent, desperate, and hidden in plain sight. Eleanor's strained smile and rigid posture weren't simply the result of formal posing or anxiety. They were the outward mask of a woman who knew. She knew her child was gravely ill, and that no one would listen. "The grip makes sense now," Dr. Lowe murmured softly as she examined the image again. If the baby had weak muscle tone or couldn't hold himself upright, Eleanor would have needed to support him far more than usual. What looks like tension may have been necessity, but necessity could not erase the sorrow etched into the woman's expression. Dr. Lowe's conclusion was unsettling. Eleanor had been living a double life, publicly radiant, privately unraveling, forced to smile for a society that demanded beauty, composure, and joy. Even as her heart broke in silence, Rachel remembered the line from one of Eleanor's letters, "The thoughts I have harbored." Dr. Lowe nodded gravely. In 1910, mothers were often blamed for their children's sickness or death. If her baby was failing, Eleanor may have internalized that guilt. She might have believed she'd somehow caused it, or that she hadn't been good enough to save him. The photograph then was not merely art. It was a record of quiet suffering, a moment in which grief, guilt, and duty were all frozen together behind a smile that society demanded she wear. Rachel's search took a darker turn when she uncovered Eleanor's medical records in the archives of Philadelphia General Hospital. The handwriting was tidy, detached, the voice of early 20th century medicine, Dr. James Morrison. His notes were brief, clinical, and chilling. May 20, 1910. Mrs. Kellerman reports persistent concerns about infant's muscle tone and responsiveness. Physical exam normal. Patient appears anxious. Typical new mother worries. Recommend rest. June 10, 1910. Mrs. Kellerman insists infant is not developing normally. Husband reports obsessive behavior regarding child's health. Suggests excessive maternal attention may be detrimental. The notes continued in that same dismissive tone, the language of an era that treated women's intuition as hysteria. Eleanor's observations, now recognizable as signs of neurological illness, had been reduced to maternal anxiety, and still she was expected to appear perfect. The Kellermans were pillars of Philadelphia's high society, the kind of family whose every move was chronicled in the Inquirer's social pages. Reputation was everything. Rachel found one such clipping dated June 1910. Mrs. Robert Kellerman and her charming infant son recently sat for formal portraits capturing the radiant joy of new motherhood that so becomes young matrons of Philadelphia society. But the private letters told a very different story. June 12, 1910. Robert has arranged for the photograph to appear in the society pages. He says it's important for business for people to see us as thriving. I don't know how I will manage to smile when my heart is breaking with worry. June 18, 1910. The session was agony. I had to hold James so tightly to keep him still. I feared he might have one of his spells during the exposure. The photographer kept urging me to smile more naturally, not knowing that my smile was hiding terror. A picture-perfect family, concealing a tragedy already unfolding. The final revelation came unexpectedly. While reviewing the remaining boxes from the estate, Rachel discovered a small sewing kit. Its hinges rusted and its lining faintly scented with lavender. Inside, wrapped in a piece of faded linen, was a small diary. Eleanor's handwriting filled its fragile pages entries from 1910, each one more desperate than the last. May 25, 1910. James had another episode today. His body went stiff, every limb, for almost a minute. Then he went completely limp. Dr. Morrison says this is normal behavior. But I know what I saw. Something is terribly wrong. June 1910. Robert refuses to seek another opinion. He says Dr. Morrison is the best and that I'm making myself look unbalanced. He's arranged the family portrait, saying we must show the world that we are a happy family. How can I smile for a photograph when I know my baby is dying? Rachel's throat tightened as she read. Eleanor had described with painful clarity symptoms that modern medicine would now recognize as seizures, neurological deterioration that no doctor of her time would have understood. June 14, 1910. I held him again tonight. His breathing was shallow, and for a moment I thought it had stopped. I prayed it was only my imagination. But deep down, I know. I am losing him. Each word bled with exhaustion, the voice of a mother abandoned by science, by society, and by the people closest to her. And still, the world demanded she smile. The photograph had captured that impossible moment. A woman holding her dying child, forced to pretend everything was fine. A smile for the camera, a mask for the world. And behind it all, the quiet, unbearable truth that history had almost forgotten. The night before the photograph, Eleanor wrote of practicing her smile in the mirror, the kind of smile everyone expected from a joyful young mother. But her hands trembled as she held baby James, not from nerves, but from the quiet strength it took to support his weakening body. I feel like I'm living a terrible lie, she wrote. On June 15, 1910, the photograph was finally taken. To Eleanor, it felt like a betrayal, a performance of happiness, while her heart fractured beneath the surface. She held James as tightly as she dared, silently praying he would not seize during the exposure. Her smile, she said, felt like a mask covering my screams. And then, she wrote something that would echo through time. Someday, when people look at that photograph, I hope they will understand what I was really feeling. The later entries in her diary are almost unbearable to read. July 10th, 1910, James is slipping away and no one will believe me. The doctors still insist nothing is wrong, but a mother knows. I failed him. Failed to make them see. And 5 days later, my baby died this morning. They call it sudden respiratory failure, but I know better. James had been dying slowly for months while everyone told me I was imagining things. That photograph, it will be all that remains of our time together. But it captures the worst lie I ever lived. Rachel's research revealed that Eleanor's tragedy did not end with her son's death. In the weeks that followed, her grief deepened into what the records coldly called nervous collapse. Dr. Morrison, the same physician who had dismissed her fears, described her condition as an unstable maternal temperament, never acknowledging that her instincts had been right all along. From his notes dated July 25, 1910, Mrs. Kellerman remains in a state of severe melancholia. Her insistence that the child's death was preventable has created tension within the family. Husband reports fixation on the idea of medical negligence. In her own diary, Eleanor's words are filled with guilt and defiance. July 20th, 1910. Everyone tells me it was God's will. But I know the truth. I saw the signs and no one listened. Now I must live with the knowledge that my voice did not matter when it should have. Family letters revealed that even her mourning became a source of social embarrassment. Robert Kellerman, concerned about appearances, wrote to a business associate, "My wife's prolonged grief has begun to affect my reputation." By August, it was decided she should be sent away to a private sanitarium. Rest, they said. Distance will help her recover. The records from that institution, fragile and incomplete, describe her as suffering from melancholia and obsessive fixations on medical negligence. But among them, Rachel found a single letter that still carried the weight of a mother's truth. September 15, 1910. They tell me I must accept that James' death was natural, but I cannot lie about what I saw. I documented every seizure, every moment of rigidity, every sign that something was wrong. If speaking the truth makes me appear insane, then perhaps madness is better than silence. Eleanor had not been confined for grief, but for refusing to accept the polite lie of her time. She was punished for insisting that what she saw and what she felt was real. Rachel's investigation then turned to modern medicine for clarity. She showed Eleanor's diaries to Dr. Sarah Williams, a pediatric neurologist. Dr. Williams read the words slowly, the clinical precision softening into empathy. Based on her descriptions, she concluded this child almost certainly suffered from a severe neurological disorder. Those episodes of stiffness, followed by limpness, they are textbook seizures. Dr. Williams' analysis brought the story into sharp, heartbreaking focus. The slow deterioration Eleanor had described over those months was consistent with a progressive neurological disorder. Many of the symptoms she had noticed could in fact have been diagnosed and perhaps even treated with the medical understanding available in 1910. The tragedy here, Dr. Williams said softly, is not only that the baby died, but that the mother's careful, accurate observations were dismissed because she was a woman. Eleanor had been offering what was in truth a meticulous clinical record. Yet her words were brushed aside as hysteria. Rachel asked Dr. Williams to study the photograph itself to see what Eleanor had seen. The doctor examined the old print, its sepia fading into silence. "Look. Here," she said. "The infant's posture, his lack of tone, the mother's tight grasp. These are classic signs of neurological impairment." That forced smile, she explained, was not the mask of shame but the expression of a mother holding together a crumbling world. Eleanor knew her baby was dying. She just couldn't make anyone believe it. Her smile, frozen in that moment, became something far larger, a symbol of every mother whose instincts are ignored, whose truth is softened into silence. Dr. Williams looked up from the photograph. Eleanor was right. Her instincts were right. The tragedy isn't personal, it's systemic. This image is a document of medical injustice. Rachel sat with that thought for a long time. Eleanor's grief had been buried quite literally by her own family. After her institutionalization, the Kellermans rewrote their history. Robert remarried in 1912. By the next generation, Eleanor and her baby had vanished from the family record entirely, their names omitted from every story, every album. Officially, she died in 1914. The cause, chronic melancholia. But the archives told another truth. Among the donated materials, Rachel found a sealed envelope, its wax unbroken for more than a century. Inside a letter, written in Eleanor's familiar trembling hand. "To whoever may find this letter, I know my family will try to erase all memory of my son and the truth of his death. But I cannot let that truth die with me. The photograph that survives us tells a story no one wanted to hear. I was not a hysterical mother. I was a witness. My child died not by God's will, but because no one listened. They told me to smile, so I did. My smile was the greatest performance of my life, hiding the most profound grief a mother can know. I hope that someday, in a world where women's voices are believed, someone will see that photograph for what it truly is, not maternal joy, but a mother's desperate attempt to protect her dying child." It was signed Eleanor Kellerman, loving mother to James, who deserved better than the world gave him. Late that night, under the dim light of her office, Rachel spread the documents before her, the photograph, the diaries, the letters, the medical notes, the final confession. Together they formed a portrait of truth long denied a woman whose intelligence and love had been mistaken for madness. Eleanor Kellerman's smile had indeed hidden a dark secret, but not the kind of secret whispered in family scandals. It was the secret of knowledge, the unbearable knowledge that her baby was dying and that no one would listen. Rachel shared the letter with Dr. Williams. The neurologist's voice trembled slightly as she spoke. This letter, she said, is extraordinary. It reads like a medical case study, accurate, detailed, precise. If only someone had listened. And in that moment, Rachel realized something. Eleanor's tragedy was not just her own. It was every woman's, every mother's voice dismissed in the name of propriety, every intuition buried under the weight of polite disbelief. The dark secret, Rachel told her colleagues the next day, was never Eleanor's. It was society's a century-old silence that cost lives. Today, the photograph rests in the museum's archives, finally accompanied by Eleanor's full story. It is no longer a symbol of maternal bliss. It is a document of courage and of injustice. The forced smile that once concealed despair now speaks for every mother silenced by the world's refusal to listen. Eleanor Kellerman's secret was never one of shame. It was one of truth, a truth her world wasn't ready to hear. And perhaps it still isn't.